अब से कुछ ही मिनट बाद भारत में दुनिया का सबसे बड़ा टीकाकरण अभियान शुरू होने जा रहा है।
समग्र देश प्राउड फील कर रहा है क्योंकि ये देश की उपलब्धि है और मुझे विश्वास है कि कोरोना हारेगा, देश जीतेगा।
India has reached that historic milestone. This huge population, 1 billion vaccine doses already being delivered to ages 18 and above.
You're watching News Epicenter with me, Marya Shakil. India has achieved a major milestone in its fight against COVID-19, surpassing the 100 crore vaccination mark and sending a message to the world. The feat has been achieved in just 279 days or 10 months, making it one of the world's largest vaccination drives. Prime Minister Narendra Modi hailed frontline workers and the vaccine makers for their role and fortitude, which has not only eroded vaccine hesitancy, but also petty politics for the greater good. But the fight is not over. The COVID danger is still clear and present. While the next challenge is to vaccinate children with jabs in the pipeline, but this feat has shown that India can do it and create the systems to beat this disease. Joining me on the show are the minds behind this milestone, the government's principal scientific advisor, Professor Vijay Raghavan, and the Chief of COVID Task Force, Dr. V.K. Paul. Thank you so much for your time. Professor Raghavan, I'm coming to you first. India has achieved a rare feat today. You have warned that a third wave was inevitable. Is that warning still holds, or we have overcome that risk?
You know, vaccination is a very important and probably the primary route out of this pandemic. And broad vaccination, and we have accomplished an enormous milestone today, vaccinating 100 crore people. And we need to go forward with speed and vaccinate all those who are eligible twice. But when we do that, we decrease the prevalence of the virus in the population. And that decreases the probability of dangerous, even further new variants coming up. So the more we vaccinate and the sooner we finish that, we lessen the chances of new variants which are dangerous from coming up. So that should be our goal.
Okay, Dr. Paul, how do you look at today, this moment? Do you feel it is time for us to take a little break and celebrate this milestone, or we have a lot more work to do to ensure that the pandemic ends through vaccination?
There is no time to take a break, Maryaji. This is a milestone, but this is also work in progress, work in continuity. We still have to do a lot more effort to put the pandemic out of the narrative of the nation, out of the mainstream life of the nation. We still have a significant way forward. But at the same time, this milestone assures us that we can meet the challenge. This milestone shows us the power, scientific power, organizational power, that India can handle this challenge and such other challenges. And it also marks the very high point of our achievement in terms of the actual vaccination coverage. And the credit goes to the leadership of the Prime Minister, who gave the mandate for finding vaccine solution at the earliest possible time, mentored it, guided us all, and envisioned that we will depend on our own efforts, Atmanirbhar efforts, to be able to create vaccines and scale them up rapidly, effectively, and on a very, very big scale.
Okay, then Dr. Paul, are we on track to vaccinate the entire adult population by this year end as has been planned?
I think the reality of achieving 1 billion dose coverage, I think speaks for how far we are in a position to go. It is so reassuring that 75% of India's adults have received at least one dose. It is reassuring that 30% of India's adults have received 2 doses, and the numbers are rising by the day. We do know that we have to cover together with, as a nation, 24% of adult population which has not yet received the first dose. So an important milestone still to be achieved, and we have to reach the final mile as well. At the same time, we would like second dose to be administered to those whose second dose is due. So there are more milestones to come. It is not not an accomplished aim and the goal as of now. It is for us to get people to the vaccination centers and remind them about the second dose. And here, the role is not only of the government, perhaps even more so now. The role is, the media, the communication leadership, social media, grassroots workers, neighbors, Panchayati Raj institutions, self-help groups, and just about everybody. We need to volunteer for this effort. Maryaji, it will not be possible. As you move along and climb a mountain, the higher you go, more difficult it becomes. And in this context, those who have been left out have to be reached wherever they are.
Yes.
They are there in cities.
Yes.
They are in pockets, and we need to reach out to them.
Since
they
you're
may be
talking
remote locations.
Yes.
So we need to work together for that.
Yes, since you're talking about the 2 doses, there is a huge gap in the first and the second doses. Just 30 crore people are fully vaccinated. Is it normal as per your own calculation, or people are shying away from second dose per se?
We know how many people are shying away, and that number as of yesterday was about 10 crore people. So 10 crore people are those who, you use the word shying away, but I'll put it more scientifically and correctly. These are the people whose second dose has been due, and the due date has passed, and they have still not taken the vaccine. So I would like to appeal to them individually, collectively, that please, you have taken the first dose. You have been kind enough to take the first dose for yourself and for the society. You have thrown away the so-called vaccine hesitancy. You have loved the vaccine that you received. But please don't stop at 1 dose. Your second dose is due. With 1 dose, now this is the kind of communication that should reach. That's the point I'm trying to make. With 1 dose, you reach certain immunity, which will fall very soon. Okay. 2 doses, the immunity rises exponentially, not just double, it rises exponentially. So please get protected through full immunization coverage. So yes, that is an unfinished agenda. And I think if we create a narrative, we create a buzz, we create a special effort, special programs, shall we say, and remind them through multiple ways that you really know how to do as communication people, and of course mobilization on the part of the system, we will achieve that goal. So the unfinished work is those who not receive the first dose, to take the first dose, 24% of adults, and those who receive the first dose take the second.
Before I come to the booster dose, a question to you, Professor Raghavan. Now that our vaccine production and supply is in a proper flow, will the government restart Vaccine Maitri? How can we ensure then that if that begins, it doesn't impact our own vaccination drive?
The government's perspective has always been to ensure equity and access. And given the scale of the pandemic in India, it had to focus on India substantially. And as you rightly point out, the extent of manufacturing required that focus largely in India. As vaccine availability scales and as vaccination progresses more widely in India steadily, as it's doing, other options become available without compromising what we're doing in India.
Okay, Professor Raghavan, schools, colleges have partially reopened, offices are also opening, public places are almost functioning in full capacity, and we have our festive season going on. Do you think that can put us in some risk?
The risks can be mitigated substantially if we also keep in mind, in addition to vaccination, that we must follow COVID appropriate behavior. And this requires, particularly when we are in close proximity to each other in crowded places, that should be avoided, crowd should be avoided, and one should be masked when one is in close proximity with others. Very, very importantly, and this is something which we have learned, ventilation is a very key player, and therefore our closed spaces must be opened up and ventilation should be enhanced. When that is done, then, along with vaccination, calibrated opening up, as is happening now, is eminently feasible.
Okay, after Covaxin, Covishield, Sputnik V, how many more vaccines are in the pipeline? Because there is a lot of curiosity about what is coming, in terms of vaccines for the people of this country.
We are going to see many, many different kinds of vaccines coming, and now there's space for more innovative kinds, those which, work at room temperature, for example, those which can be administered in more easy ways, those which are more valuable for administering in difficult contexts, such as elderly or children. These kinds of innovative vaccines will come, as also those which would be effective against potential new variants. So this has really opened up the vaccine development and innovation space.
Okay, Dr. Paul, is there any talk within the government, or should I say thought in the government, about booster shots? Because there are many countries who are going ahead with booster doses. Can we expect something like that here in India?
Not many countries have gone for booster dose. Even the advisory from the US agencies is a mixed, advisory. So the first point really is that there is no clear cut, shall we say, evidence-based global, recommendation for the booster dose. And let me elaborate what I mean. We are using multiple vaccines. Information coming from, let's say, an mRNA vaccine in vogue, which says there is some decrease by 6 months, may not necessarily apply to another vaccine. That means we need, and also if the antibodies fall, it doesn't mean anything, because the T-cell immunity is hugely important in its own right, and that is a different ball game together. So my first point is, we do not have enough data about the timing of the so-called booster dose, or specific reason for specific vaccines per se. That's an evolving science. And I know that this information is being tracked for the vaccines that we have used. So let's understand fully, when is the optimum time to give the booster? That is yet to be answered. Yes, in enthusiasm, there have been recommendations that the booster be given after a certain time to certain groups. So the issue is that this is in the gray zone of science as of now. And let the science evolve. Today, the priority is that those eligible adults of India should receive the first and the second dose, for which supplies are enough, and we plead that task, which is a primary task for us, should be completed.
Okay, what about children? When can we expect vaccination for children in India? Is there any special plan to ensure sufficient availability of vaccines for children whenever it is approved? Because, we saw that particularly in months of May and June, several states reported vaccine shortage. Now you're saying that the states have sufficient vaccines for inoculating their population.
Children's vaccine is also in the domain of science. There are countries which have started vaccinating children, fair enough. Is there a universal vaccination recommendation for children from, let's say, World Health Organization? The answer is no. Are we talking about vaccinating children with immunosuppressed state? Perhaps yes. So it's an evolving science once again. And I think booster as well as childhood vaccine should not take away, and I'm saying it again, the cost of repetition from the main purpose of vaccinating the adults. And on the evolving science and ideas on childhood vaccination, the National Technical Advisory Group on immunization is examining the need for such vaccine and which groups should be prioritized. Should it be adolescents only, or should it go to a certain lower ages as well? Should it be only those children who are immunosuppressed and have certain other diseases? This whole aspect is being actively examined. At the same time, we must be also watching out the space for the availability of child-specific licensed vaccine. And we only have two. We have DNA vaccine, which can be given up to the age of 12 and above. So potential vaccine, we would request the NTAGI that we have already requested in that sense to tell us whether that would be the best use of this vaccine, and if so, how do we go about? Likewise, Covaxin, which is the mainstay adult vaccine for us, one of the two mainstay vaccines for us, can be given up to 2 years now, recommended. But what would be the way forward for us to utilize this vaccine for pediatric population? Putting everything together. Please also note that there are people who say, and experts who say, with responsibility, that children have already been part of the trajectory of the pandemic. They get mild disease, mortality is negligible. We don't have to worry. Only certain groups may be important. So again, evolving science.
Okay.
Watch the space. This is being actively pursued.
Okay.
And if need be, India will have enough portfolio for vaccines. I want to assure the parents and families that the biggest guarantee for children at this moment and forever is the protection that you as parents have taken the vaccine. Adult vaccine is the first guarantee of children being safe, and that is very, very important. Likewise, teachers should take the vaccine, staff should take vaccine, drivers and transportation workers who ferry children from school, for example, should take the vaccine.
Okay.
That is our shield around our children, first and foremost.
Okay. Professor Raghavan, we have achieved that milestone today. What are the challenges going forward?
First of all, we must keep in mind that it's an extraordinary achievement that vaccines have been developed against SARS-CoV-2. Biologically, it needn't have been so. It could have been difficult. But those kinds of difficulties which were there have been surmounted. But it also required speedy going through the process of approvals in a manner where vaccines could be developed, manufactured, tested, and deployed on scale. So that's been absolutely incredible. Now, it's not sufficient to manufacture vaccines on scale. The delivery pipeline is very, very important, and that's not a small matter in a complex country like ours, and such a large country. These are areas where there's not much to learn from other countries. Our complexity and our diversity is such that we have to pave our own path, and it's very, very impressive that our health ministry, our IT ministry, the National Health Authority, the people who have driven the COVID portal, state governments, central governments, cities, ASHA and Anganwadi workers, all of them have come together in this incredible manner. So this is very, very impressive. And really all credit goes to everyone involved, and very importantly to the beneficiaries who have received the vaccines and are doing so enthusiastically. They are really the foundation going forward, and that's a principal challenge now, vaccinating everyone twice, and the active participation of those who have been vaccinated and everyone else from our community is very important.
Okay, since you talked about approvals of vaccines, can you tell us the status of Pfizer and Moderna vaccines? When can India expect those? Or are we still in the process of clearing the legal hurdles?
Our colleagues in the health ministry and the member of Niti Aayog, Dr. Vinod Paul, are actively involved in these processes, and they would be best placed to comment on that. Okay. But I should just add that, India has been always open to these kinds of discussions, and these discussions will mature as we go along.
Okay, before I give the final words to Dr. Paul, I want to know from you, Professor Raghavan, lessons learned from this once-in-a-lifetime pandemic and the entire process.
You know, this has been an extraordinarily difficult and gut-wrenching journey for every one of us, from citizens to people who are involved in decision-making all over India and all over the world. It's not been easy. And the reason is that the kinds of changes which have happened during the pandemic right from the start, many of them were unanticipable, could not be anticipated. So, for example, the kinds of variants which emerged, that they would have such vehemence was something which was not anticipated, and it put an enormous strain on systems in India and all over the world. The vaccine development has gone well, as we've talked about, but it has faced many challenges because of the variants and because of administration, and India has handled that aspect well. Finally, I would say the important areas which we need to attend to going forward are two. One is, global agencies need to address equity and access on a much surer and effective footing than they have done recently. The great danger going forward is that if you don't vaccinate the whole world, we're going to run into problems. And there are many parts of the world which don't have access to vaccines. So global agencies have an important role to play over there. And similarly, tech transfer in every aspect of vaccine development needs to be opened up so that vaccine development against potential new threats, and including the current one, go forth very speedily.
Dr. Paul, last question to you. Can we expect any relaxation in the mask rule for fully vaccinated people in coming days?
No, there is no room for relaxation on the mask rules. No, we know it that all the vaccines available in the world today, they do minimize transmission because that research data shows how effective they have been, but they are not fully capable of doing so. We also definitely know that the vaccines available, including the ones that we have, are hugely effective in reducing or eliminating mortality and hugely reducing the serious disease once taken in optimum both the doses. Now that is true, but remember, this virus without warning can change shape, can behave differently, can have characteristics which overpower some of the stable situation that is now visible to us. Transmissibility, lethality, and also compromising the immunoprotection from the natural disease or from the vaccination. And therefore, since the virus is still floating around, and if virus is floating around in any part of the country is a risk to you, to me, anywhere, and if it is lurking anywhere in the world, it is still a risk for our nation as well. Therefore, please have the second layer of protection apart from the vaccine, which is wearing a mask, avoiding crowds, celebrating the festival within the household, and not going unnecessarily out, avoid crowd, avoid unnecessary travel. Those precautions will still continue. We can review them in about 3 months' time once our vaccination program has reached other milestones, which I have referred to already.
Yes.
We'll watch the pandemic situation at that time, and there will be an advisory from the government based on science and epidemiology and research and our best understanding of the behavior of the virus.
All right. Dr. V.K. Paul and Professor Raghavan, always a pleasure to speak to you. Thank you so much for joining us today on this momentous day as India completes that milestone of 100 crore vaccines. That's all from me. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll be seeing you tomorrow.